All right, Damien, you're live with me. I'm sorry about that. I know there's a thousand different ways you could spend your lunch today, but uh, thanks for thanks for doing this with me. We are live
Absolutely.
on LinkedIn, and uh, what some people may or may not know is that Damien is one of the OGs of the Greenville startup entrepreneur tech community through a group called Next. And he was one of the first people I met when I moved to Greenville and didn't know a soul back in 2010, 11. And so,
That's before you
welcome,
started
Damien.
like multiple high schools and
Yeah, that's
all
right.
kinds of things. Yeah.
All kinds of things I got in trouble with in Greenville. Um, well, so we're not going to go into all sorts of craziness. Actually, I want to spend most of our time learning about the work you're doing with MSPs and the interviews you're conducting and how that's going. Because I'm pretty fascinated by it. A little bit of trivia you might not know. Hook Security started as a channel focused company that just works with MSPs. It's in our DNA. Most of our revenue comes from MSPs. We have some large enterprises, but we are all about the MSP. We're all about the channel. And that's largely thanks to you.
Hmm.
What I have found out over time is vendors who get to know MSPs tend to preach the gospel of MSPs, and then
Yeah.
they other people. So, what I'm curious about your background, Damien, is how did you first get exposed to the channel and MSPs? What convinced you to build Servosity for managed service providers? And let's rock from there.
Yeah. So I was an MSP before I knew that. Right. We had this like recurring thing where we got paid every month instead of just break fix hourly. And we thought that was really cool. And then later, years later, somebody was like, that was managed services. I was like,
What
really?
what was the timeline of this though? Tell me how long ago this. It's
So this
2025
is,
now.
yeah. So this is like early 2000s.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
So, this was very crude tools. We had no RMM. We could remote in, but, very basic tools. And we were charging a monthly contract because we thought, well, maybe if we try to keep you up and running instead of drive out there furiously whenever you go down, that would be better aligned with business because it was wonderful when you would crash and burn and we'd make a fortune, all except for you didn't like that and, tended to mess up our plans for that weekend or that Friday or whatever. And so, only later I look back and go, that was managed services. And my story, the short version of it is I was an MSP that thought if the backup said successful, naively you could restore it. And I had to learn the painful way by standing in front of my client and saying that thing you trusted me with, I don't have it. And probably like a lot of people, I thought, well, man, I'm the only one. It feels like this. I'm the only one that's been through something like this. I'm the only one that's this stupid. A lot of feelings there. And I started talking to other MSPs, and they're like, nah, it happened to me. It's happened twice to me. It's happened 3 times. And so that's what led me to start Servosity, because I said, as an industry, we can't just go around and live in fear that the other shoe will drop. And when the client needs this, and we've got to, recover that, we don't know that we can. And that's just crazy.
That's interesting. I don't know that I knew you when you were doing MSP work. I
No.
knew when you were moving out of some website design projects that might have been part of your MSP work, and you were starting Servosity, and it was you and one other guy sitting in a cubicle,
Yeah.
um, and you were also trying to raise a little bit of capital
Yeah.
to get the lift because when you started back in the day, there wasn't a lot of cloud providers for
No, no,
backup like
no. In
that.
fact, we were calling it cloud, but our early pitch decks had to educate what was cloud. Like
And
to
what was MSPs, right? You had to
and
tell
it,
investors.
unfortunately to this day, for the most part, like only recently are there kind of investors that know what MSPs are.
Mhm.
But yeah, what is an MSP and what's cloud? Like, so it made it much harder than it needed to be, and I'll look back and go, well, I probably could have, simplified a few of those things. But why would you want to do that? And do it in that way and in that kind of model. And especially when cloud was, a nascent term and managed services was much newer, right? 20 years later, the industry is far better understood, has a whole different trajectory of investors and
Well,
private equity.
I remember though, this is what blew my mind at the time because, I'm just a broke entrepreneur myself.
Yeah.
Not to put you in a box, but you were trying to raise money to go buy equipment, to go rent a space at a local data center, to
Yeah.
put that equipment in there, and then make sure that you had access and permission whenever the equipment would break or was not fully optimized.
Oh, yeah.
And so people were outsourcing their data recovery to you, and then you felt the stress level had to have been through the roof as you managed the hardware infrastructure for that.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned there's this group called Next in Greenville, and people call it an incubator, and it's not. But it was a group of crazy entrepreneurs that, got together and helped each other. And there was a quote unquote competitor that was really good at managing infrastructure. And for the first several years, nobody could tell us apart because we had to buy all the equipment and stack it and rack it and make it work and make spinning disks behave and all kinds of nonsense pre-cloud. We were the cloud. And so now we leverage the cloud so we can focus on our differentiator, which is the people, process, and the technology. But man, back then, sometimes it was hard for me to tell that we weren't some form of a data center based on all the costs and all the time.
So, and that's much different than what you do today, or at least the latest passion project of yours, right? Which is you're going around just interviewing MSPs, and in particular, the MSPs who have been doing this a while, and whatever battles they're fighting, they're making progress on, right? So you're interviewing some of the fastest growing, most unique MSPs out there, and I'm actually I'm fascinated by the project, but I want to know what is the craziest things you're learning? Like you're into it. Not to give away the end, but you might end up like writing and compiling and aggregating all this information together. What is your takeaway right now? Like you're in the middle of all these interviews, all these conversations on these podcasts, which I recommend to other folks. But what are you learning? What are you taking away?
Yeah. So my mission is to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. And so it interviewed from, locally to Australia and everywhere in between. And to try to figure out how do you become one of the top 100, right?
How do you?
Because
what
if
do you
you listen to the numbers, there's 20 to 80,000 in North America, never mind the world, right? So how do you become the top 100? Because I'm not great at math, but I think that's past the top 1%. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and so yeah, and the thing, like I've learned two things. One, not all MSPs are the same, despite what everybody says, like it's a race to the bottom and commodity. But we do generally have the same struggles. And so, at the end of the day, Hook is a valuable partner and Servosity is a valuable partner to MSPs, but the top issues are not which partner generally. If it's the top issue, you're probably doing pretty poorly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So that's what's been fascinating for me to learn. And then at the behest of several of these top MSPs that are growing so much faster and having so much more fun doing it.
Okay.
Which is interesting that they've, encouraged me to write the book on it. So I'm interviewing 100 and also distilling it down into a book that I'm writing now.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting thread to pull, is the fact that you can correlate whatever success and growth is for an MSP with the amount of fun they're having.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're getting out of the pain cave.
Yeah.
And somehow you don't have to trade off if I want to grow, it can't be fun.
Yeah.
But actually, the more fun you're having, the faster you grow. Like, what's your favorite story thus far that kind of reflects that?
Well, look, we've got, I just last week I interviewed an MSP that started And in 6 years, they only made it to 96 million in revenue.
Only.
Poor guys. By the way, no PE.
Okay.
Self-funded.
Self-funded.
96 million in 6 years. So,
okay.
Right, you have those that are going to make the headlines, and certainly we want to learn from. On the other end of the spectrum, I've interviewed several folks. One that's pretty well known in the podcast world, Uncle Marv, who,
okay, yeah,
he runs a great one-person managed service business. And my point is, it's in what you're looking for. So if that's what you're looking for, he's successful. That's what he wants to control who he does business with and how he does business, and not kind of trade that for looking out for team and worry about other people and payroll and all the things that go along. But mostly this is for the people that do want to grow, don't know why they're growing, and yeah. So what I've learned is there's a lot of similarities. There is not one silver bullet, unfortunately, but I'm distilling this down into kind of the top rules to follow if you want to be one of these guys. And it seems just statistically impossible or improbable that you will get there if you don't do some of these things, because I'm releasing one episode a week. What most people don't know is I'm recording 3 or 4 every week, and they're long format. So I get to spend about 2 hours with the best and brightest minds in our industry. And so by the time I'm done with 100, I'm going to have about 200 hours of the best and brightest MSPs in the world. And so, I'm about 75 interviews in. It just started writing the book in the past month and distilling those, lessons down. And once you start to see it, it's hard to unsee. You start to see patterns. You start to realize, I guess, 2 things. One, you can run things a certain way. You can have your own flavor, right? There are those kinds of things. Because the other thing I want to do is I want to bring a better perspective than I built an MSP and I sold it, and here's my playbook, and it's the only way that'll work. Do it my way, right? There's a lot of, I built one thing.
See that a lot of places. Yeah. The once lucky, twice good people, and the lucky people writing books.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that, and look, you might be able to do it the way somebody else did it, but in the book and out of my interviews, if you watch the podcast or YouTube, MSP Mindset, you will see there's actually some, there's patterns, but you also see ones that, for example, the vast majority niche. And then what I've been able to correlate is if you have what I call a dual or triple niche, then the growth seems to correlate to that. But I've gone on my way to interview people that are fast growing, and there's some people that didn't niche and still made it. So they are the outliers. So, so far my direct research seems to say, if you're as dumb as Damien, you want to make it hard on yourself, don't niche. And you might make it like a few of the others. But for example, if you do niche and you truly niche, and not just for market focus, but what I call a dual and a triple niche, that'll impact your entire business, because your service delivery team, your operations team, your sales and marketing your go-to-marketing motion, all those things can now be experts in a single niche, instead of saying, we have to be kind of the experts in the greater metropolitan area of fill in the blank, right? To everybody in the world, you can say, we really understand this area. And that's not just the sales and marketing side, right? Now you know the same applications because you see them day in and out. And some of them have actually become experts in just a handful of applications. And that's what I mentioned earlier. It's scary, but some of them have made that decision. Not only has it resulted in faster growth, but kind of the more unexpected thing is not only are they, but their team's happier because they're focused. And they're
That's
like,
right.
I'm really good at these 3 applications that if you're like a healthcare dermatologist, you use. Everybody else doesn't care. But in this little niche, in this little lane, I'm the best in the world. And the MSP can say it, and their team can say that, because it's really true. Instead of, 150 to 350, depending on the size of the market, of us fighting it out for, we all offer managed services to anybody that could fog a mirror in a 100-mile radius.
Yeah, that's right. That's I mean that's a good reminder for myself, even at Hook, that the what do they say? There's riches and niches, and
Yes. Yeah.
so I know you have a number of other things coming up on your day. So I'm going to give you a chance to pick between these last two questions here. So you pick the one that is most interesting to you, which is first, like, what is the topic that you're all into right now? What's the subject area that you're all into professionally or personally that you're just keep digging into? Or what's your favorite question to ask other people?
Mm.
Getting to know what they're doing. What's your favorite question, or what's your favorite topic right now?
Yeah. I do feel like since I spend the majority of my time interviewing, I'm basically in the business of asking questions. And so that one is kind of near. And I think that's also why I do the longer format, so you can really get and go deep. But I think it depends on who you are in the season, right? Of that, what that question is. Certainly one of them is the book that's made the biggest impact, because that way I can understand, or the last book, if there was a book. Some people it's a podcast or something else. Yeah. One other thing, the other question you asked is my take, maybe a very unpopular take, is on AI. And AI is not about the technology, which changes every nanosecond. You got into being an MSP because you like things change, and now they change too fast. And so, but my take is AI is all about people, because we now have something we can interact with that can form human-like thought. And so now it's the psychology and the opportunity and the fear, and how you're going to show up and lead your team and your clients. Because now people are sitting there going, is Mr. AI about to hand me a pink slip based on the next advanced thing that comes out? And so, whether they're saying that or not, they're probably wondering it. So I feel like there's an unprecedented opportunity to step up and lead and decide you're going to stand for something. And you can stand for cost cutting and cutting people and embracing the latest thing. You could decide to stand for people and say that we're going to figure this out. We're going to have an open dialogue. Maybe even like I did with my team, say, I don't know. And I don't know all the answers, but we're going to figure it out together. And we're about people. And, the goal isn't to cut people. It's to, to become a slimmer company. The goal is to enable people to do things they might have not been able to do before. And that's not only our team, that's our partners, our MSPs.
Yeah, now I want to do a long format, because I think that's a real fascinating topic to unpack. We're in cycle with that right now, inspired by a conversation I had with you, where we're going through the 5 stages of grief around AI.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Like, for those of you who don't know, the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And like everybody, depending on the day, depending on what they're interacting with, if they're touching AI, is in one of those 5 stages. Yep. Right. And so, and I went out to a large MSP conference in Vegas, and I saw all 5 stages all the time.
Yeah.
Denial that it was going to do anything,
right.
Anger that they had to deal with it, bargaining, this is what AI does, this is what I do, or depression, like, what am I even good for? And then acceptance. And I think that's there's a topic that I've been looking into a lot, which is around the social hive mind of humans, and how much our human brain relies on other people's brains, and what that social construct and social contracts we have, and all the way down to the family unit, where like if you're in a monogamous relationship, you actually rely on the other person's memory. So like, what does that mean as we live in a time of AI? But we're coming up on time here. And so thank you, Damien, for jumping on LinkedIn Live with us. Definitely want to have you back, because now we're going to do some sort of, we're going to get into an interesting topic, not than MSPs and how we create businesses with them or their business models and how they grow is not interesting. That's fascinating, endlessly complex. But I want to get into these fun topics where we can debate something and we can argue about it. So
Yeah, and who knows if anybody's right, but we can still have a good spirited debate.
oh, no one. That's the best part of the news cycle is we can have a debate, and then a year later we can have a different debate and take different sides. No one will remember.
I forgot facts don't have place. Yeah,
That's right.
news cycle.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Damien. We're going to drop now. Have a great day, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Zach. Take care, guys.
We'll see you.
Bye.